Hello and a warm welcome to Federal's special program Capital Beat. A day after the Women's Reservation Bill failed to pass the test in Lok Sabha, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is set to deliver an address to the nation at 8:30 p.m. This is what his office has announced, and the PMO has given no clarity on the subject on which he will address. However, the timing of his address coincided with the Constitution 131st Amendment Bill failing to secure the requisite two-thirds majority in the lower house. Now, the bill sought to implement 33% reservation for women in parliament and state assemblies, increase Lok Sabha strength from 543 to 850, and carry out delimitation based on the 2011 census. While 298 MPs voted in favor of the bill, 230 opposed it. Now, what we are told, and some reports, all source based, that there was a cabinet meeting held in the morning. Yesterday, you saw a number of women MPs holding placards outside the parliament, and they were protesting against the India Bloc, that they have an anti-women mindset. Now, Nitin Nabin, the party president, is planning to hold nationwide programs. Apparently, they will be poised to protest against Rahul Gandhi. They will protest against the India Bloc parties. That is what the plan looks like of the BJP. Now, I want to show you an advertisement which was put out on the national dailies. If you have checked on the newspapers this morning, every newspaper has carried one ad. And I would like to put it out on the screen because it's quite a telling one. What it says is very, very important. Now, here, it's the half page is divided into two columns. One part talks about the fact that Prime Minister Modi is committed to 33% reservation for women. He brought a constitutional amendment, a true guarantee of justice. It's the BJP that stands resolute and committed to protecting and empowering women's rights. And what is stark, bold words about Congress, this is what it looks like. But Congress revealed its anti-women mindset, rejecting women's reservation. Now the women of India will ask, why is Congress anti-women? Now, whoever has designed this creative is very, very, I think they have a very clear message put out. The portion with the positive part which BJP is trying to put out for themselves is not highlighted that much as what they have put out on about Congress, that Congress is an anti-women party. They have an anti-women mindset. This is highlighted in big and bold letters. And look at the font size of the letter and also the color scheme where they talk about that BJP stands resolute. So you can make out from the very ad which has come out in the national dailies. Now, what we are told from the sources in the India Bloc is that the India Bloc parties will be holding press conferences across the country and tell the people what BJP's real intentions were, how they were wanting to bring in delimitation in the garb of women's reservation bill. Now, today, Priyanka Gandhi held a press conference around 12:15, and I'd just like to play out a portion of what she said. Yes.
The campaign, the Congress plan to counter this campaign?
See, I think it's very, very clear. We are saying very, very clearly, and we will say this from every platform, we will say this in every state, not just the Congress party, but every party of the India Alliance will say it very, very clearly. Bring that 2023 legislation which was passed, make whatever change you want to get it done by 2029, we will fully support it. We will say this again and again, all over the country. And the other point that I was making in Hindi earlier was that things have changed for this government. It's very visible from their actions. Firstly, they are under a lot of international pressure. It's very, very clear. A lot of the actions they are taking, I don't think, as my brother has said multiple times, any Indian Prime Minister would have accepted the terms of the deal that they have done with the US unless there was massive pressure. He is obviously under massive pressure. It is very obvious. So public is seeing this. The public continues to suffer with multiple problems. The price of gas, price of fruit, vegetables, everything has gone up, and especially the burden of this is on the shoulders of women. And it's across class, across caste. It does not matter whether you're a rich woman, poor woman, whether you live in an urban center, whether you live in the villages. Your problems are increasing. And there is nothing coming from the government to resolve them. So the public can see it. So they can take their Mahila Morcha in front of whoever's house they want. They can make as much tamasha as they want. This country has now awakened to the fact that they do not stand by their words. They cannot be trusted, and certainly women cannot trust them, because we have seen their attitude and their behavior on multiple occasions. So I think it's very clear. They can do what they like. The public is seeing everything very, very clearly. And the chronology of their, the chronology of the last few days, the way they have brought this bill, the things they have attached to it, the delimitation, the 2011 census, it's very clear. They knew this bill is not going to be able to be passed. They just wanted the political credit.
So this is what Priyanka Gandhi had to say during the press conference she held yesterday. But DMK has an excellent counter, which they have put out, though India Bloc is planning to go nationwide with their press conferences. But Tamil Nadu's ruling DMK has proposed a private members bill instead, delinking the reservation from any change in the total number and boundaries of the constituencies. Now, DMK bill proposed to implement the 33% reservation from the very next election on the existing 543 Lok Sabha seat without any seat increase, delimitation, or census data, new or old. Now, this bill by DMK MP Wilson is any opposition party's most direct legislative response so far to the BJP's charge that rival parties blocked women's reservation altogether. So the big question we are asking on today's discussion is that Prime Minister will be speaking tonight. I'm sure he's going to lambast, if he at all, if the agenda of his nation's address is women's reservation bill, which it looks quite likely, but you never know what PM has in store for the entire nation. We still cannot be 100% sure that he's going to talk about the women's reservation bill. But if at all it is going to be about the women's reservation bill, he might lambast the India Bloc, the opposition parties, and he might announce a nationwide plan as well. This is just a speculation. But if it is about some other agenda, we do not know as of now. But if the idea is to talk about the women's reservation bill and how he failed the two-thirds majority floor test as far as this constitution amendment bill is concerned, then can the opposition really counter this BJP's narrative? BJP is planning a nationwide program. They will protest, they will hold press conferences, they will go door to door. But can the opposition also counter effectively what BJP is trying to say? We'll try and discuss this. These visuals on your screen are from the last night's protest, which happened of all the women MPs of the NDA, the BJP. They held placards. And in fact, people were criticizing this fact that, at around 8 o'clock, the bill fails. And within 20 minutes, these BJP MPs had their placards ready, all printed. So which means that it was a well-calibrated strategy. Many people have tweeted also about it. So the big question is that can the opposition counter this narrative which is being given out by the BJP on the women's reservation bill? Joining me this evening is Professor Radha Kumar, author and policy expert. Thank you so much, Radha, for joining. We have Shabnam Hashmi, author and social activist. Thank you so much, Shabnam. Both of them have held press conferences. Radha, Shabnam Hashmi, both of them on different consecutive days, they've held press conferences while the special session of the parliament was on. We have TK Rajlakshmi, deputy editor of the Frontline magazine. Thank you so much, Rajlakshmi, for joining. And let me begin with Professor Radha. DMK has given a befitting response to the women's reservation bill, that how it should be brought about. But the kind of narrative which is rolled out by the BJP, are you hopeful that the India Bloc leaders will be able to counter this effectively?
Well, first of all, by the way, Shabnam and I have worked together. So our press conference was a joint press conference with several other women's groups as well. As far as the opposition narrative is concerned, I think that the MP speeches in the 2 days that have passed were excellent. They all made the point very strongly that they voted unanimously for the Women's Reservation Act. They all made the point that they stand for it. Many of them made the point that it has nothing to do with the census or delimitation, which is a fact. And many of them also pointed out to how the BJP was trying to instrumentalize the act and women's reservation in order to push their own agenda of seat expansion to over 100, 850 in fact, and to do delimitation completely delinked from any census, to do it on 815 seats. In fact, I mean, the horror of this is that 815 is something they are suggesting that they can decide with Parliament. No census figures required at all. That means that the voter has been erased entirely. To get to the opposition narrative point, I think that the DMK's move to introduce this legislation is something that the entire opposition should support. It's the most effective counter because it shows a serious and real commitment to women's reservation. So I would say absolutely support that. We ourselves have asked, which Shabnam will, I think, expand on, we too have asked for certain amendments to be brought to the Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam, the Women's Reservation Act, in the monsoon session. So there are several ways in which the opposition can counter. They can counter first and foremost by introducing legislation to make the operationalization of the act immediate or speedy at any rate. They can do that, and that will be a challenge for the BJP, because how are they going to oppose it? That's a strategy they'll have to think about. As far as this narrative building of the opposition being anti, and the Congress in particular being singled out as anti-women's reservation, I mean, Priyanka Gandhi's speech in Parliament was brilliant. And it showed what a long history of commitment to women's reservation the Congress has had. However, the BJP controls it controls the majority of the media outlets. It controls social media through its various IT acts. So countering a narrative is something that then has to be done in different ways, because the mainstream media does not give an opportunity to the opposition. Now, the regional language media is one place where the opposition can possibly find greater space. Certainly some of the languages, I mean, the Bengali language media, the Tamil language media, the Malayali language media, the Kannadiga language media, all of these will be very good. I presume that in many of the northeastern states, those local language medias will be supportive. In Jammu and Kashmir, there is more or less censorship. So what do you expect? I mean, this is, bear in mind that when we say, can the opposition counter, the opposition is working on an extremely restricted access situation.
Right. But let me just interrupt you here. I'll come back to you because I want to get in Raj Lakshmi here. Raj Lakshmi, let's also talk about the fact that why is Prime Minister Modi forced to address the nation tonight, and coming as it does just a day later after this Constitution Amendment Bill failed. He failed to pass the 2/3 majority mark, and now he feels the need to address the nation. Many people have been speculating about the fact that, what if midterm elections are announced? What if he cries or sobs? Many people are also speculating that, okay, it might be, of course, he'll try and lambast the opposition and send out a message as usually he does. What could be the possibility? Because we do not know the agenda of his nation's address. Neither has the PMO said, except that he's going to address the nation tonight at 8:30. What could be the agenda?
See, he did try hard, to get a consensus in Parliament. And also he also tried to use this, against the opposition in a sense, to sort of, convey to them that if you do not support this, everybody is watching TV right now, and they're all going to see, how you voted. So he tried, some kind of a blackmail. One can use that word. It's not exactly, yeah, but I think it was just that, so but I'm glad, and also, like, Professor Kumar pointed out, that the opposition in fact got its act together, and they were absolutely unified on this, that they aren't going to vote and support this bill, this, in fact, the constitution amendment bills. And so I think that was a highlight, of in fact yesterday's session. And it was defeated by around 68 votes. The bills were defeated by 68 votes. Now obviously his address is going to be, I think, on the same lines. I do not think that, midterm elections, is on the agenda. uh, I think, what's on the agenda are these two state assembly elections, that are around the corner, and he has his eye on that. So he's essentially going to make, pitch for the women's vote, and everybody in this country has seen, how, effective it can be in getting, a party to win. So I think somewhere down the line, this is what I said in fact yesterday also, the BJP isn't quite confident of doing well, in the state assembly elections, which are due, say in a week or two. And so I think this is a final pitch, or rather like a last ditch attempt. This is campaigning essentially, for elections. It's just that this
You
whole
see the
stunt
address
of
to the
this.
nation. So you are saying that this address to the nation is nothing but part of a campaign for elections in Tamil Nadu and West Bengal, largely for West Bengal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's absolutely targeted. Towards that. He will again, I think, give a list of all his government's achievements and all the things that they've done, and it will sort of come back to the same thing that we tried. But there was one party, I don't think he's going to name them, obviously. So he'll say that, that they let us down, that they let the women of this country down, and similar
But
on the
but the
lines of what
ads,
he said.
but the advertisements which have come out in the national dailies, they in those advertisements, Congress has been called out very clearly.
Yeah, advertisement is one thing, but when he speaks, he's going to address, the cadre. He's going to address, I think, people outside the cadre also, to his followers, basically, whether the andhbhakts or bhakts or whatever. So I think, that is going to be the mission, because this is, desperation. The entire calling of this, of this 3-day session also, out of the blue. In fact, the opposition was not taken into confidence. The opposition was not taken into confidence about the contours, of delimitation at all. In fact, which they have been, demanding, because there are very serious federal issues, involved. It's not just about women's reservation, but there are, serious federal issues involved, in the, yeah, in the way, if, delimitation is conducted, because states with fewer, smaller states with fewer populations, in fact, will lose out in the entire thing, tax structures, tax
Right.
derivation, everything. Yeah.
Rajlakshmi, there's always what we've seen in the last 11, 12 years, that even if the BJP government is wrong, they will try and say that, there's nothing wrong about what they are doing, whether it was the farmers' bill, or whether it was demonetization, whatever side effects or whatever adverse effects we see of the decisions they have taken, they don't seem to be regretting at all. And there are many instances, Brijbhushan and so many others, cases where we've seen that the government has gone wrong, but they've not admitted, neither have they taken any action. This time in 12 years, for the first time, they have, as far as the legislative business of the parliament is concerned, it's a severe defeat which is staring at their face. But even then, the kind of brazenness which is being showed by BJP, what does it go to show?
See, just like the farmer bills, Nilu, they, in fact, when when they had to withdraw them, so at that point, what did they say? They said, we tried we tried hard, to convince our farmer brethren, but I think, it was our failure, to convince them. So it was like, win-win situation. It was not that they felt that there was something wrong about the bills. They in fact never admitted it, because it was, after all, a government legislation. But they said, that perhaps the fault lies in us. I mean, like Brutus probably, that that we could not convince the farmers, and therefore TK we sort of take it as it is. So I think something similarly, I mean, it's going to be said, but with much more let's say aggression, and there'll be a lot of, I think, attack on the on the opposition in the Congress as to how they ganged against the government for this seemingly good step, which would have liberated the women of this country, which would have given them so much of representation and all. Because obviously, the Aam Aadmi is not going to understand this whole issue of delinking with delimitation, etc., and the consequences of all these things. So he's going to speak in a language that's going to appeal. I mean, that could appeal, but I think now the onus lies on the opposition to also to sort of tear apart this narrative, and of course using the DMK's bill to say that, look, we've moved a bill, and we are saying abhi implement karo.
Yes.
Okay, we are saying, implement it now, and well, you can do it in the winter session, and that you
Right.
did not have, a delimitation exercise. Now, the 2023 Act had, made it conditional. It was not the opposition that made it conditional. It was this government that made delimitation and the census, conditional on the implementation of the 2023 Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam. Okay, so they are saying, so it's that, I mean, in fact, the government that has been caught on the wrong foot. So the opposition can, if they, I mean, if they really want to sort of take on the government on this. Yeah.
So, Shabnam, let me come to you now. Do you think that after yesterday's defeat, is Prime Minister Modi or the Modi government really exposed in the eyes of the women of the country? Or do you think that the women still will be getting driven by the Ladli Bahin Yojana or the gas cylinder Yojana or various other benefits which have been doled out to the women? What is going to be the impact on the women of the country after this defeat, which was televised across the nation, and the kind of things which we have seen later on with BJP women MPs protesting? Now they are planning another round of protests, going door to door on this.
You see, first of all, Neelu, I very strongly differ on this. Women were never impressed or led by the Ladli Yojana or the Ujjwala Yojana or the 10,000 rupees dole in Bihar. BJP builds a narrative. It builds a narrative. It just gets all the media to believe in that narrative, to show that the women are with Modi and with BJP. And then after 6 o'clock, it puts in votes into the EVM machines so that nobody questions the narrative. In Bihar, the same thing happened. Nobody was there to question that narrative that women voted for BJP because of the 10,000 rupees. I can guarantee you they did not. And the same thing is going to happen here. This natak is done to create a narrative in the across your whatever channels they have. The biggest question for the journalist should be what time the creative for this advertisement was given to the agency. I can assure you that this creative was ready to be released to the newspapers. It was
Like
very
the
well
placards.
thought.
Shabnam, you pointed out rightly, it's just like these placards were ready within 15 to 20
Yes.
minutes after the bill was passed, I
And
guess.
let me take you back to 2002. Within hours of the burning of the train, VHP leaflets were distributed all around Godra, which said that Muslim have attacked and they have raped your women and take a revenge. This is nothing new. The problem is that we refuse to understand the strategies done by BJP. It was all extremely meticulously planned. They knew they are going to lose, and they did it only so that they can say, look, the opposition is blocking the reservation. In effect, BJP never wanted to give the reservation. If you look at the bill, I mean, beginning from the name of the bill, what is Shakti, Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam?
Yes.
What does it mean? It doesn't mean equality. It doesn't mean equality at all. It means patronizing. It means putting women at a pedestal while the daily life she's suffering like hell. So they do not have in their ideology an equal status for women. Even the formula which they were using, delimitation, increasing, it was a zero loss for men. They didn't want to give away any seats. They would increase extra seats, and like second class citizens, women would be given these extra seats. They were not ready to give 33% of the present seats which are there. So this is all very well planned. Despite that, I think it is important that in the last 12 years, for the first time, they have been defeated on the floor of the house. That is, there is no way that it is not important. But they knew it that they will be defeated, and that is why, as you already mentioned, these placards were already printed much in advance. And what they are going to do is go from district to district, village to village in Bengal and Tamil Nadu. Right now, it is not important for them what happens in the rest of the country. This is being done for the elections. Whether the opposition can counter it, I think over the last 14 years, it is not only the women but ordinary people of this country have realized that this government has not delivered anything, nothing at all. There is a small section of the bhakts with whom you cannot argue anything because they do not have the capacity to think. Their minds are totally controlled. But rest of the people, we just have to go on social media and see the kind of response. And young people, the kind of response which is coming, there is dissent all over. But they control the narrative in the national media so that they can manipulate and rig the elections. And they will try the same thing this time. And recently, there is enough evidence available now. Parakal Prabhakar Parkala, recently in Constitution Club, he has given in detail how Andhra Pradesh, after 6 o'clock, 35 lakhs votes were added. So they have and the election commission is sitting in their lap. So they just want to convince everyone that we have won genuinely. So they create these narratives. They have no commitment to giving reservation to women. They do not think that women have an equal status in this country. They have an extremely patriarchal, feudal, and Manuvadi soch. So I have at least no doubt over that. But I think, along with the opposition, it is the duty of the women's movement and women groups across India to go to the people and tell them how this government has fooled the women in the name of reservation
Right.
for women.
All right. Coming back to Radha, Radha, what should the opposition be doing now? Of course, they will hold press conferences. They will also make it into an electoral issue, just like BJP is trying to play out the optics for Tamil Nadu and West Bengal. But in the long run, if opposition really wants to show that what they said and what they did actually meant for women, what should they be doing?
Well, first of all, I would say they must all support the Wilson bill for the 33%, and they should immediately also follow suit with other legislation, such as what we have recommended for the Nari Shakti Act, which is first and foremost cut out the clauses linking it to delimitation and census. Second, to give a date of speedy implementation. It can come into, it's already supposedly come into force on the 16th. But whether that applies yet to 543 is not clear. So the opposition should also seek government's commitment and clarification on that. That can even be a part of the narrative. But they should also take these positive steps to introduce legislation that can be very speedily enacted in the monsoon session, I would have thought. And then they can proceed to build that narrative that while the BJP goes around advertising, they have actually taken action. That would be one of the points I would make first of all. Remember that narrative also depends on action. So if you are seen to be acting, you can change the narrative, you can turn the tables. That's where I would say the opposition should concentrate. Then, in any forthcoming elections, I would say the opposition parties should maybe follow the kind of lead that Trinamool has given, which is to have more and more women candidates on your slate. So think of that in upcoming state elections, you have more women candidates. You contact women's groups well in advance who would wish to support those candidates. Get a women's slate going. These are the kinds of things that will attract support and show that you are moving positive while they are moving negative. I mean, one of the big problems for the BJP now is that they have been forced into negative campaigning. All that earlier business of 56-inch
Yes.
chest, hamari shan, हमने ये किया, हमने वो किया, is now becoming वो लोग बुरे हैं, वो लोग बुरे हैं, वो लोग बुरे हैं. After a while, nobody cares about the वो लोग बुरे हैं argument. They care about what are you doing. So the opposition has a huge space over here if they wish to fill it. I'll stop there.
All right, so I'll come for the concluding comments to Raj Lakshmi and Shabnam again. Raj Lakshmi, so again, the same question which everybody is guessing, and your guess, I think, would be equally as mine. We do not know what the agenda is going to be, but can we expect something surprising other than the women's reservation bill? Of course, everybody is speculating that it has to be, everybody is assuming that it has to be on women's reservation bill, but what if there is some other agenda?
No, I doubt it, Nilu. I mean, at this point, at this stage, I doubt it. I think this was, a gambit that they played with, and they knew that it was going to be defeated. They fully well knew, because they knew the opposition's position on this also, that it should be passed in its current form, and that it should not be preconditional, on the census, on the new census and fresh delimitation. I thought that perhaps the BJP may have hoped for a chink in the opposition's armor, and that they could perhaps sort of divide their ranks, and that they could get the votes in their favor. But I don't think that happened. I mean, I think this is really remarkable. The opposition's unity on this issue. I think it's quite remarkable. In fact, irrespective of the fact that they knew that perhaps it may have certain consequences. It may have certain consequences, because the BJP is going to go to town, using this thing. But what extent it's going to succeed? Because ultimately, I think what the opposition can do, is to sort of, link this with the issues, of the Aam Aadmi, the LPG prices, okay, the prices of fuel, the prices of all essential commodities, that have gone up, and that and hence they should make this an issue, saying that that this government does not think this a priority, and it's trying to sort of get the women's bill, through the back door, and using all kinds of means, and it can always reiterate its own position, on the women's bill, which hasn't changed. In fact, it has not changed since years, altogether. So I think there is scope, and I think this speech today addressed to the nation is, a last ditch attempt to salvage, I think, whatever they can for the two state assembly elections which lie ahead. And so this is an election speech, essentially. In fact, without sounding as an election speech, I mean, it won't sound like one, but every speech of his is an election speech. So it's so I mean, if it's whether it's for a local body election, or for of a parliament or the state assembly, all his speeches are targeted only for that, one and only objective. So let's see, Nilu. Let's wait and see what he says. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so Shabnam, your concluding thoughts on this, and how do we see this? I mean, is the story going to end, or the heat will be on at least till the results are not out of
No, I
this
don't
assembly
think the story
elections?
is going to end. The story is going to continue beyond this also, because it will not stop only at the women reservation bill. Now they will, after that, they'll go to North Indian states, UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, and say that we wanted you to fight elections. We were increasing the number of seats, but look at the opposition. It is not allowed delimitation and the increasing of the seats. It is not going to stop at
No, but
women
Shravan, this
reservation.
this also reminds me that the as far as the delimitation challenge is concerned, I think Radha also can answer this a bit on that. That the delimitation challenge still remains for the opposition. How is opposition going to tackle this?
I think,
Why?
sorry,
Ha.
Yeah, Radha.
Okay. Yes, Shabnam, you go ahead first, and then I'll come back to Radha on this. Yes.
No, I was saying that now with this bill defeated, the number of constituencies is not going to increase. It will remain the same because it was freezed earlier and it remains. They were trying to change that. Now the bill has been defeated. But I just want to add one more thing before you go to Radha, that I think what is very important as a nation for us to understand that whether it is Rahul Gandhi or all other political leaders of the opposition, they knew that these could be the repercussions, but they did not compromise on principled politics. And that is very important, that they stood with the principles. They knew the repercussions both ways. If they were passed, then what is going to happen? And if they were not passed, then they would have known that this is what BJP will do. Still they stood with the ground and defeated the bills, which is very important.
Right. All right. Yes, Radha, the same question to you. And the kind of principled stand which the opposition has taken. I was watching the press conference by Priyanka Gandhi, and a few of the reporters also asked her that are you not disappointed that the women's bill has not got passed? You're still talking about constitution. You're talking about federalism. This is a question which I think is repeatedly going to be asked of the opposition. And what about the delimitation challenge? Very briefly, Radha. Yes.
So let me first of all say that the BJP has been and continues to woo women as a constituency. We should not imagine that this is something restricted to this one women's reservation bill or anything like that. They have a very large worked out program to woo women by giving various what they themselves call freebies, and at the same time encouraging them to be conventional, to be conservative, say we worship you as wives and mothers and the rest of it. So this is part of a fairly well worked out strategy to woo women with different elements to attract different segments of women. And the opposition does need to think about how they counter that strategy long term. And on delimitation, as Shabnam pointed out, now this issue will come when the census is completed and the provisional census results come out. That is, if they ever complete the census, because I kind of wonder whether they're avoiding the census altogether and whether all of this was also a strategy to avoid the
Yes.
census and the caste census in particular.
Right.
But what we have seen from the examples of Jammu and Kashmir and Assam is that they have already a very, very well worked out scheme of communal gerrymandering, also gerrymandering sometimes in SC constituencies, and gerrymandering politically. So three elements: anti-minority, anti-opposition, and sometimes anti-SC. Is the way that they have created new constituencies. And that, having gotten away with what they did in Jammu and Kashmir and Assam, partly because the courts have not responded in the way they should have, they will aim to try and get that done on a national level. And some of us are working anyway on what kind of principles and criteria should be used in delimitation to ensure that both electors are given equal weight and that states are given fair representation. These two principles, we believe, can be balanced, they can be accommodated together. And we are working on proposing a
Yes.
series of criteria for that. also to tighten the criteria of any delimitation commission, its composition, its memberships, its rules of procedure, its accountability. These are all now issues that have come to stare us in the face because of what has happened in the recent few years. And so there's work to be done, but fortunately there's time also for that work to be done.
Right. All right, so less than 3 hours left now for Prime Minister Modi to address the nation. It's 5:15, 8:30 is the time when he's going to address the nation. I'm sure everybody will be glued to the televisions and to their phones, listening to what Prime Minister Modi has to say. I'm really reminded of the COVID times when he used to address the nation often. We've actually ran out of the habit. So, we'll have to wait and watch what happens at 8:30 p.m. tonight. Thank you so much for joining Shabnam Hashmi, Professor Radha Kumar, Rajlakshmi. Thank you so much for joining.